everybody. My name's Jamie Sweeting. I'm the president of Planeterra, and we're here for another Planeterra Trek Fireside chat. We're doing these annual virtual treks, and this year we're heading up Kilimanjaro, the largest mountain in Africa. And I've got three amazing folks here with me today who have actually done this trek. So perhaps you'd like to introduce yourselves. Let's start with Nuppy.
Hi, yeah, my name's Nuppy Mistry, and I'm a Global Connections Officer with G Adventures. Been with G Adventures coming up to 4 years now, and I summited Kili back in 2015, in January.
Fantastic, thanks Nuppy. Becki?
Hi, I'm Becki Enright. I'm a travel writer from bordersofadventure.com and also one of the G Wanderers. And I summited Kili last year, like the month before COVID came. So it was the last biggest trip, the last biggest achievement before everything happened. So yeah, not so long ago.
Well, thanks for joining us, Becki. And Bruce?
Yes, my name is Bruce Poon. I'm the founder of G Adventures. Thanks for having me, Jamie. Nice to see you, Becki and Nuppy. You guys are challenging me in terms of when I summited now. I didn't think we were going to. I summited in 93 and 96 is when I summited Kilimanjaro. And I'm debating whether it was 96 or 97. And I'm going to, because it was tied to, because while I was up there, my twin nieces were born while I was on the mountain. So whatever year they were born. But yeah, it was a long while ago. Twice though.
Is that in your Wikipedia file?
No, probably not. Probably not.
So yeah, so we're just going to have a chat really about what your guys' experiences was, and so people that are going to be either kindly donating to their friends or family members that are, or colleagues that are doing the virtual trek, or they're actually doing the virtual trek, and we can maybe bring it a little bit alive to them of what the experience is actually like. I'm feeling like I'm ready for the virtual trek. I would absolutely not be ready for the real trek in 2 days' time. Let's start with you, Bruce. I understand that you've not only done it once, but you've sort of certainly attempted it twice. What made you do this in the first place?
Well, I mean, I was in my 20s, so I was young and stupid, I guess. It just seemed like a thing to do. I mean, at the time, I used to do a lot of different adventures. I started G Adventures in 1990. I did, at that time as well, I did Everest Base Camp. I was just an explorer, I guess, and it was just a thing to do. The Inca Trail, believe it or not, back then, the Inca Trail was closed. The Shining Path were kind of prominent in Peru. And so I was just collecting kind of experiences and adventures at the time, as you do when you were young. And it was just a thing, because it was there, I guess, is the answer. I can't think of a valid reason, but, I was young and wanted to, seek out adventures around the world. And Kilimanjaro is one of those, monumental things you want to do. The highest, mountain in Africa, the highest peak in Africa, the roof of Africa, they call it. So it seemed like the thing to do.
Now, Becki, I hear you're a very keen hiker and climber, and you've done a number of these kinds of treks. And I understand you did Kili, as you said, just before COVID. So you've done other big treks, like I understand the Lost City trek that others may not have heard of in Colombia, Everest Base Camp. And you took a while to get to Kili. Was there any particular reason that was your latest?
Yeah, I think it's to do with a bit like what Bruce touched upon with the monumental aspect of it, because if you look at a lot of the highest peaks around the world, say you go like the highest mountain in whatever country or continent, a lot of them are actually quite inaccessible and difficult to climb or super dangerous. So you have, in the one sense, you have the monumental aspect of a summit you can actually climb safely, and that's like within reach for many people and not just technical mountaineers. And so the other part of it is that on a lot of the other treks, like Everest Base Camp, you're getting to like a mountain base. And with Kili, you're actually getting to a summit. You're getting to the very top of a mountain. And there's something about that you might just want to wait for. Like I personally wanted to have a bit more long distance trekking experience under my belt. And also there's a little bit more like planning, more training that you have to do for Kili, and a little bit more saving. It's more of a costly trek as well. So people tend to wait a bit longer before they go on that. So there's lots of different factors, but the fact that it's actually a proper summit hike is definitely a factor that makes it a much bigger decision and can kind of give people a little bit of anxiety for that summit hike aspect. So yeah, you gotta keep going. Everest Base Camp was my first trek. So it was kind of a baptism of fire for me. I went straight into that. And I'd never done any long distance trekking before. But it was really good training to understand that I did enjoy these kind of treks. And yeah, and you start up in the ante and trying to do bigger things.
So Nuppy, I understand there's like a number of different popular routes. I think there's actually quite a few actual routes that you can do it, but there's like 4 or 5 popular routes that you can hike up Kili. And I mean, I guess that's because of what Becky's saying. It's sort of the technical nature of it. You know, some routes you need more days to do it. Is that right? You know, you did the Machame Route? Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, and obviously,
tell us a bit about that one.
Yeah, and back to your point about obviously the technical aspect is I traveled with a bunch of probably 8 people, and we were all looking at something that had more days for acclimatization. So the Machame Route can be either 5 or up to 7 days. So we did up to 7 days, and that was obviously very successful for all of us. So that was really cool.
So is that because, you know, some people struggle a little bit with the altitude, and therefore if you've got more time, you can I mean, I've heard some people actually walk back down in order to go back up. Is that right?
That's right. So they say climb high, sleep low. So you're acclimatized for the next day. So the Machame Route being up to 7 days allows you to have that extra time to breathe and let the hypoxia set in and acclimatize to that too. So the Machame Route worked for the best, well, for everyone's fitness levels in that group.
And so your whole team made it up, did they?
They did, yeah. Some of us struggled a little bit, and we'll probably get to that about summit night, but yes, it certainly wasn't easy.
So Bruce, do you recall which one you went up, or and how different it was to what Nuppy just explained?
I did the Machame Route as well the second time. I don't remember the route I did the first time actually, because I tried to look it up actually, and I went with a friend, and I called my friend actually, sent a message to my friend to ask as well if he remembered, but I don't remember, and I don't know if there was that many routes at that time either. If they'd opened up routes later, I'm not sure of that, but I do remember taking it slower the second time, and so because I didn't summit the first time, so and that's the reason. One of the reasons I went back. It's not truly the full reason, but I did things differently and slower. I mean, acclimatization is everything. I mean, what Becki said is very true. Kilimanjaro is attainable by anyone if you plan right and you take it slow. When I first went up, I think I was 25 or 26. So we were running up the hill. I remember because we were just fit and young, and we didn't eat, and I didn't plan. And by the time, at the end, we just ran out of energy. But if you plan it right, work out a bit and get in shape, reasonable shape, because and altitude hits people differently every time and never hits you the same. Like I had very little problems the next time, but it's achievable without technical climbing, and so that's why it's enticing for a lot of people who want to achieve it and don't need technical gear to get to the top.
Yeah, so I mean, Becki, that's what we've heard through from both agents and travelers. That one of their big questions about this is how much do you need to train in advance, and how much preparation is needed. As Bruce said, it's not actually a technical climbing. You're not taking ropes and all of that, but I imagine you know, as with all of these things, the better prepared you are, the more likelihood is that you'll have a reasonable time and you'll get up to the top. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, people are different in terms of how much training they do. Some people, you know, really go all in for a year, but I would say on average, you're looking at try and have a routine for 3 to 6 months. And so we trained for like really solidly for 2 months right before. We did little things before that. And we did a lot of hikes with various inclines. We didn't just do a lot of flat hikes because we wanted to get used to the endurance that comes from, it's kind of that strenuous uphill. And also you have to kind of train a lot of patience in yourself as well. So it's better to try and get some of that in as well. And ultimately that is the time you need to test your gear. So, you know, your hiking boots, we'd never used like, you know, a camel water pack before. So the first few times we were drinking out of that, we're like, oh, this feels really weird. And you don't want things like that happening when you're on the stress of a hike. And then what I factored in as well was, you know, high intensity workouts, which you can do at home. Did those a couple of times a week. And that's kind of building on core strength and stamina. And then another cool thing I did, which I found helped, was because I was trekking in February. And so I did that Yoga with Adriene 30 days of yoga challenge in January. And so I used that to help with my breathing technique because of the altitude and for that kind of rhythmic pace that you have each day of trekking. Because I have asthma, and so the breathing thing was really important to me, that I had all of that under control. So I kind of had a bit more of a rigorous plan of different things. But if you can mix in like strength training with endurance hiking, then yeah, you're pretty much covered for the general things that you get to experience day to day. And like Bruce said, like, you cannot determine what altitude is going to do to you or how you're going to react to it. You can, you know, get the tablets, you can make sure you go slow. Your guides are always making sure you go slow. And you have to train the patience for that slow pace, because sometimes it's so slow that you're not used to it, and you can't get frustrated with that, because you soon see after a few days that slow pace is absolutely needed. You can't go any faster. And by that point, you're so used to it. So yeah, put all those things together and you should be fine.
So you just mentioned a camelback drinking thing. Are there other things that, you know, I mean, I imagine there's the obvious gear that you have to take, but is there sort of a unique thing that any of you would say, hey, you remember taking this with you and it was particularly helpful?
Garbage disposal bags. And that's to separate your clothing, especially if it gets wet. Sometimes water can leak into the porter's containers, where the containers that are used to carry your bags. But also you want to separate the smelly clothes from the clean clothes too. So a lot of people did not have that. Their clothes remained wet. So as we stopped at certain areas, the porters would use the kitchen to dry the clothes. So yeah, just disposable bags are really important, I think. It's not one that people would think of, but yeah.
Yeah, and I just did a backcountry canoe trip, and I will never do a trip again without all those wet dry bags that I bought on Amazon. So, Bruce, what about you? Do you remember taking anything in particular that was particularly useful?
Power bars was a big thing for me. Yeah, because I used a lot of power bars. I don't know if we'll get to this in the conversation, but eating is a big and important part of the Kili Trek. And when anyone asks me for advice, eating is a big part of it. But and so I brought power bars, and they helped me a lot. I mean, I you know, food, as I said, is another topic, but but along the way as well, there's distractions. I mean, the second time I brought a dice game to play with, you know, a simple dice game, Yahtzee, if anyone knows Yahtzee, which is easy to pack and easy to, and I had that was also just to pass the time and, you know, socialize with the porters and the people that are on the trek with you. I think is also really important to keep your mind off just sitting there and feeling cold and wet and altitude.
Becki, how about you? Anything other than the camelback?
Well, I agree with the other things to pack, but just something that gives you comfort. So it could be that you have a Spotify playlist, like some people would just tune out of the group and then listen to their music because that de-stressed them during the day. Or, you know, we bought like our favorite chocolate bars because sometimes when you just had a really hard day, and you need to just mentally decompress, just sitting in your tent for half an hour and just indulging in your favorite snack can actually really turn things around. And it doesn't seem like much on like a normal day, but when you're in these, you know, kind of stressful situations, those little moments kind of just make everything better. So pack your favorite chocolate bar, download your favorite
chocolate
music.
Always makes the world better, right?
Yeah, download a movie even and watch it a little bit per day, like just anything that makes you comfortable.
So you've both mentioned food there. I'm going to sort of extend that a little bit. Nuppy, tell me a little bit more about what the whole basic things like eating and drinking and sleeping are like on the trek.
Yeah, so sleeping, I'll start off with the sleeping aspect of Kili. As you get higher, it's harder to sleep. So you don't actually hit stage 5, and sometimes I don't even think you hit stage 4, or the REM sort of aspect. So you're not always fully sort of recovered. So back to the food aspect, electrolytes are quite important for your drinking water. And in terms of food, I mean, the porters are great cooks. Their porridges, honey, there's lots of fruits. They cater to all dietary restrictions. So we had a number of people who were religious, so halal aspects as well. I decided to go a little bit more vegetarian on the climb. Lighter stomach meant I could sort of, like, I guess, well, how do you say it? Digest along the journey, and then just have little micro snacks along the way. Sleeping was always interesting because your tent could be put on an incline, so sometimes you would be having to contend with that. So you'd put your bag there and kind of snuggle it. But yeah, there's all kind of sort of these things. You got the gale force winds and things that are moving you around a little bit. But yeah, the experience is different day to day. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I'm collecting these little words that you've dropped in here about rain and gusty winds, and maybe we'll get on to maybe it's not all sort of sweetness and roses, this hike. But Bruce, whenever I've talked to folks about Kili, that always people, I mean, they use little different words, but there's sort of summit night nerves is sort of everybody gets, you don't get a lot of sleep. You're pretty wired the night before you're doing it. Can you tell us a little bit about how that all works in terms of what's particularly different on that summit night?
Well, first of all, I think you can't sleep, or you don't sleep, and if you do, it's very, very briefly, and you feel like you're awake, but you take these, like time passes quickly, and you realize you might have nodded off for 10 minutes. So it's like that, but and you're thinking of all of your bad mistakes on the way up, which is, so that's why the planning is so important, because your energy level, your metabolism is going very, is racing. And so the decisions you made in terms of what you ate, the pace you kept, all comes to haunt you on that night. As I said, when I was younger, I basically ran up the mountain and I didn't eat anything. That night was a painful one because I realized I just ran out of energy, because the first thing that goes when you hit altitude is your appetite. And that's when you're at the very beginning, when you hit the lowest, you lose your appetite, but you have to force yourself to eat. And that's my biggest advice to people when they take the trek. On those first couple days, when you hit altitude for the first time and you lose your appetite, you have to eat. You have to force yourself to eat, because it's going to catch up to you later on that last day when you're in a haze and you're kind of excited, but you're kind of in the haze of the highest altitude. You're paying for all of your mistakes at that point. But if you're well planned, you're excited. If you're well planned and you've been eating well, and if you have your treat. I had the second time. It's funny you mentioned, Becki, you mentioned having a chocolate bar. I had the same thing. I had Mars bars, and I brought enough to share to give everyone a Mars bar on that night, and that was just a simple pleasure. But yeah, so that night there is that excitement, but if you're not prepared to make bad decisions on the way up, it's a tough night. It's a tough night because you're just you're regretting a lot of decisions at that point, because you're realizing life at altitude is a struggle. No matter how healthy you are or how much you worked out, all of your training or decisions prior to that kind of culminates in that moment.
So I imagine, reaching the summit is a pretty extraordinary experience, but rather individualistic. But I've been led to believe it can be quite different depending on what time of year you're doing it. And Becki,
I think it's by the day.
Yeah, and Becki, I understand you hit a snowstorm. Is that correct?
Probably more of like a windstorm. So we had like beautiful weather. We were really lucky every day. We had a lot of sun. We hardly had any rain. And then the summit night, even in the morning, it was fairly clear, no rain, just, bitter cold, which is normal. And then as soon as we got to the top, you could kind of feel that the temperature just was really low. So it was already -10 degrees. And then we were informed there was a -10 wind chill on top of that. So we basically were in a -20 situation.
And is that Celsius?
I don't know, just
cold.
Just cold. Yeah, -20 is cold. And and so you could just tell that our porters were very much, of course, walk along that ridge and, in the crater top and go and get your picture, but we've got to leave. So there wasn't time to, be up there for 20 minutes and, look around too much. And that's just the luck of the draw. You can get up there and have beautiful blue skies, but you spend every day in rain, or it can switch, or you can be lucky and have great days and a great summit. And yeah, like Bruce said, there is the times of year where it's more snowy or it's going to be less snow-capped, but it can change by day. And that's what we found out. Like, I specifically planned my trip so I wouldn't be in the coldest season, and then I had the coldest summit. So you just can't determine anything.
You can't determine, because there's also low fronts and high fronts. And on the day, if you have a low front where the pressure of the atmospheric pressure is low, it's going to hit you hard regardless, and that's not sensitive to time of year. So and even if you have beautiful weather, if you study weather, what a low front means and a high front, you hear that the weathermen talking about it. It's the atmospheric pressure that affects oxygen levels and pressure when you're at altitudes. You can't predict that from day to day. So I think it's trying to predict the weather is difficult, because anything can happen when you're up there.
And just to add to that is, however determined you are, and sometimes you think you know better because you're really encouraged to get to the top. You just have to listen to the guides on your trip, because they know everything. They know every nuance of the weather changes, and they'll even, coming back to the food thing again, I even just got stopped by, we had like one porter each looking after us. So you've got someone watching every movement, how you walk, how you're breathing, how you're looking, and they're there to help you. And one of them just said, "Becki, stop, you got to eat right now," because I wasn't feeling hungry, but he knew at that precise moment I needed to stop for 10 minutes to have something to eat. So you just got to listen to people all the time. And if you get to the top and someone says, "Look, you've got 10 minutes here, not half an hour," listen to them, because everything is unpredictable. And that's what they're there for.
Yeah, there's no hamming it up in front of the selfies if someone's saying, "No, we got to go."
Gotta go, yeah.
Nuppy, what was your summit like?
I think I got, like Bruce said, very minimal sleep. I think I was just lying and staring at the ceiling of my tent. I think my favorite part of the summit was looking at sort of above. You see caterpillars of torches, and you're just taking one step after another, and that's all you have to do. I try not to look up too often, and we all turned off our watches so that we didn't know what sort of mileage we had to proceed with. But getting to Stellar Point before sunrise was the most epic thing I've ever seen. We had some ginger tea and we had biscuits, and we sat and watched this amazing sunrise. And then we were able to be encouraged by that to move towards Uhuru Peak. So I'm not going to say it was easy, but it wasn't crazily hard. It was just very tiring. I think, like Bruce said, we all nodded off while we were walking. I looked like an old man with my one walking stick, and I carried all my camera gear too. So I had my tripod on the side of my bag. And I think my favorite moment was actually just dropping that tripod and putting my camera on it. And I was able to get like a 16-stitch panoramic of the glacier. So that was my favorite moment. That was, yeah, the best thing. That's what the whole climb amounted to. That's what I needed to get, and that's what I did.
So yeah, so I mean, for you, Bruce, was the summit the best moment? I mean, it sounds like for Nuppy, it wasn't actually the summit that was his, you know, best moment. What was the, you know, do you have any, or is it the whole experience that you remember?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the summit was the best moment, I'll be honest. It is the camaraderie of on the way up, and getting everyone across the finish line. Like that kind of teamwork is really, and you realize it's the journey. I mean, certainly it's an accomplishment when you get to the top, but like everything in life, when you know, it's usually the journey that makes the experience and makes you as a person. And you know, selling G Adventures for a minute. I mean, we have such a great team and they're so encouraging and it's so fun. You know, the singing and the celebrating on the way up of small, you know, milestones and hitting small milestones, and you realize at the end that was the best part. It was the journey that got you there, and also the community that you build, and the, you know, the people that you're sharing it with. It's a moment in time you share forever, right? You look at the pictures and you remember that moment of being at the top. There's no question. But when you think of the memories, you think of that moment in time you shared with that, you know, the group that took care of you, the people that you trekked with, and how you came together and just, you know, and created this adventure for everyone. And that to me is the funny moments. There was so many funny moments. Like still, if I talk to people that I was on that trip with, there was so many hilarious things that no one else would find funny but us. And it was all, you know, it's those stories that you remember the most for me. But you know, the accomplishment of hitting the top is just that. And it is rewarding in itself, but you know, getting there is more than half the fun.
How about you, Becki? What were the particular highlights for you?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think, you know, it would be a lie to say that summit's all great. It is the hardest part of the entire trek, but it was for me anyway, because every day is, you know, the highlight of every day is that you're actually passing through 5 different geographical kind of systems in Kilimanjaro. So, you know, you go from rainforest to like desert to snow-capped kind of glacier mountaintop. So you actually get a real range of scenery, and every day is different. So that's one really cool highlight. And then, of course, there is like, the summit really hurts, but when you get to the summit, it's unbelievable. And I think there's a special kind of, if you haven't trekked before, you might not like know it, but trekkers will know it. It's like this really specific kind of, you can't quite describe it, euphoria that you have when you get to a big summit. Like it's just incredible. And strangely, all of that pain disappears. Someone likened it to, you will climb Kitty again because it's just like having a baby, you forget the pain, or something like this. I don't know how true that is, but yeah, everything disappears because you have that moment of wonder. So yeah, that actual point of summit is incredible. But as Bruce said, the journey, the people, the landscape, the whole process, what you go through is a highlight in itself.
I'm thinking all the mothers that are listening here are all shaking their heads going, that's crazy. But you know, Bruce mentioned the finish line. And of course, most people think of the finish line as the summit, but the finish line is actually getting safely home back to your hotel room back in the valley, right? So what's the down part like? I mean, to me, it just sounds ghastly. You've just almost died to get to the top, and now you've got to hike all the way back down. You don't have the adrenaline going then, do you? Or what's that like? Is it a bit of a trudge?
It goes remarkably fast, actually, because it takes you so long to get up, and you see it's much quicker going down. And again, this might be also age specific, but because, you know, it is hard on the knees, it is hard on the hips if you're older or you aren't as, you know, physically strong, but it goes remarkably fast because you're pretty determined. You realize, you know, air quality gets better really quickly. because you're now acclimatized to a very high, the highest level. So as you go down, you just start feeling better. And I think it takes you like, less than a couple days to come down, where it can take you 4 to 6 days to get out. So, but I don't remember it as particularly bad, but I just remember it going very quickly.
Yeah, the thing is, you don't take the same route out as you do in. So, for example, with Everest Base Camp, you would go in and out the same way. And then with Kili, you do your long route for acclimatization, sleep low, climb higher. And then on the way out, you kind of take a completely different part of the mountain down, which is sometimes the route that people use, that the porters use to get extra food up and things like that. So it's a much quicker way down because it's a completely different path. And then as has been said, it's much quicker to get down on the summit. And you have to, and that there's a big lunch waiting for you and a nap, and that kind of spurs you on a little bit. But yeah, it's different because you know that you've achieved what you needed to achieve, and you haven't got to spend another 6 or 7 days getting out.
So we have a Planeterra community tourism partner down in Moshi called Moshi Mamas, and I think wasn't around when Bruce did it, but I think Becki, you maybe went and visited them on the way out from your trek. Is that right?
Yeah, they actually come to see you when you have your certificate ceremony at the hotel, and everyone is there to congratulate each other, and everyone gets an official certificate when they either summit Stellar Point or the actual summit. So they're there for that, and they make bracelets for you. And then I was actually on my way to a Serengeti safari afterwards because I combined both trips together, and then we visited them on the way out to that. And we sat and we saw how they make their bracelets, and we talked about the business venture and how tourism funds help them set up their own businesses and be able to have jobs, women in the community having jobs. So yeah, we spent a few hours with them the next day, I think it was.
Yeah, I went with my family. Didn't do the Kili trek, but went to Moshi and and then we ended up at the Lala Salama Spa, which is another one of the Moshi Mamas tourism enterprises. But also on those trips, you can go and visit the Maasai Cook Stoves project. And Bruce, I think you've been and done that. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, that was I took my kids to that. It's a great project where you get to build a stove in a home in a community. So you get to go into the community, and they usually have a wood burning stove, which leads to their children having respiratory illnesses and eye diseases. So we get to clear out the wood burning stove and build a properly ventilated stove with all the materials supplied, learn how to mix cement. It's a lot of fun, and it's one of those projects that's so special because it's such immediate impact, right? You just see how happy the family is. They're with you the whole time. The kids are helping you as well, and in a few hours you've changed lives, and you see the immediate impact on the family, and you get attached in a very short period of time. So it's one of those things, one of those acts of kindness and giving that is so special because the impact is so immediate.
So, I mean, as we wrap up here, I guess an obvious question would be, would you do it again? But let's wrap that up into, what advice would you give anybody? Do answer the would you do it again? I mean, third time's a charm, Bruce. But what would you recommend to friends, family members, and others that might be considering actually doing it? Although hopefully a lot of you are doing the virtual version. What would be your recommendations, Nuppy?
So I would definitely do it again, and I'd probably push myself to do something in less time just to see if I could do it. In terms of advice, definitely if you're going to buy hiking boots, wear them in properly. There were 2 people on our group who had just previously bought the boots before the trek, and obviously blisters were incurred from that. So that's an important factor. Good sunscreen, because you are above the stratosphere, so the sun is hitting you really hard. And some of us were a little bit burnt from that. But yeah, just training, have a regime and follow it. Get used to having a backpack on your back for a long period of time. And one thing I always recommend during the hike is not to sit down, to stay standing, because then you'll start building up lactic acid. Stand, drink a lot of water and have hydrolytes, and you should be set.
Fantastic. Becki?
I still need a few more years before I can forget some of the little things and wonder what it would be like to do it again. So at this moment, I would say not right now, but ask me in a few years. I never say never. You know, things could change. There could be a new route. There'd be something that might entice me back, for sure. And then my tip would be, I mean, I think Nuppy covered a lot of it just then, but know that summit is the hardest night and don't worry about it because you've got people there looking after you. And do not watch any YouTube videos about the Barranco wall, because I found that for me, that was one of the most fun days of the trip, honestly. And, you know, you kind of think you're Spider-Man. We were all completely hyper. You get one of your best lunches after that day. It's really, really fun. And I found that the YouTube videos really induced like a lot of anxiety in people because people have dramatized it, because it is a high wall that you have to, you know, climb, but it's not climbing in that sense. It's just steep rocks that you're having, you know, people are helping you pull over and climb, but just don't watch any of the dramatized YouTube videos because it's honestly not that bad. So do not watch a single video, just wait for it. It's fun and you'll actually enjoy it.
Bruce?
Well, the answer was no about doing it again until now, actually. Hearing Nuppy and Becki talk about their experience, I'm thinking, you know, it'd actually be, maybe I'll consider it actually, because, you know, they had there's so many more modern conveniences that people have now. I mean, you know, like music and stuff. I mean, I had a Walkman and cassette tapes when I went up, when I went up with the big shoulder strap Walkman. So I mean, music wasn't easy to bring on my mixtapes. And so, you know, you know, phones, like I had a big camera thing, like because you know, phones take such great pictures now. So to have all that, and you know, even digital photographs. I mean, I had rolls and rolls of film to take with me, and I had to constantly be worrying about how to keep the film dry and how to keep it, you know, all that kind of stuff, and have enough film, and you know, setting up shots and tripods and, you know, flash and the whole bit, where everything's now in a camera, all these conveniences. So yeah, doing it with the modern kind of even foods and everything might make it actually a lot more enjoyable. And my advice would be, and you know, have fun, like up there, because people get really nervous about it. And I'll tell a funny story, because you know, you got to keep it real. Nuppy's talking about, you know, hiking boots and all the technical gear, and you realize the porters and the people are wearing flip-flops and wearing, you know, when they're going up the mountains. My funny story is someone ran a fax up to me to the top when I was at base camp. I got an important urgent fax. Faxing was a thing. It was a new thing when it happened.
Can you explain to people what a fax is, Bruce? We might have some younger folks who don't know.
Someone literally,
it was an urgent fax. We were printing a brochure and I had to okay something, and someone ran a fax to me at the top. I was feeling sorry for myself because I wasn't in a tent. When you got to the base camp, there was actually these little cabins, and I was just feeling sorry for myself, altitude, not breathing. And all of a sudden I heard beside my door, "You have fax, you have fax." And I opened the door and someone had ran a fax up to me, and I wrote a reply and they ran it back down. So, you know, have fun. You know, it's a great experience. You know, be prepared, do everything to prepare, but just remember, it's a lot of fun, and have fun along the way. That's my advice to people who are doing it, because there's so many YouTube videos, there's so many talks about it. You can get so much user-generated content online telling you how, you know, difficult or snowstorms or different things people encountered, but it's a lot of fun. And so have fun.
Well, thank you, all of you. G Adventures very kindly is going to do a virtual trek for the trekkers and anyone else that is interested. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I'd just like to take a second to thank you, Becki, to thank you, Nuppy, to thank you, Bruce, for your time and your stories. Having had very little interest in hiking Kili, I'm actually rather interested now. So maybe it'll be happening. So thank you all, and hope you folks get out there and join us on the virtual trek to support Planeterra. And if you can't do the trek itself, perhaps you'll consider making a donation to I know Bruce has got a team, I've got a team. Not sure whether Becki and Nuppy do, but maybe they'll join one of our teams. Take care, everyone.